Welcome back to Power Play. Federal Budget Day is coming in 6 weeks, with Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland announcing today that the budget will be tabled April 16th. How politically significant will this budget potentially be? On one hand, it could be the government's last budget before the next election. But on the other hand, Minister Freeland's spending could be limited by fiscal guardrails she set for herself in the fall economic update. Let's get into it with the front bench here tonight. Former senior advisor to the Liberal Ontario governments of Dalton McGuinty and Kathleen Wynne, Dan Moulton. He's now a partner with Crestview Strategy. Shakir Chambers worked in Prime Minister Stephen Harper's office before becoming a policy advisor to the International Trade Minister. He's now a principal at Earnscliffe Strategies. Former interim NDP National Director Carlo Belanger is with us. He's now the president of Traction Strategies. And Laura Stone is a Queen's Park reporter with the Globe and Mail. Hello, everybody. Great to see you. Dan, I'll start with you. Any reason why you think the budget is further into April? I mean, we're only sitting for 1 week. The House of Commons is only sitting for 1 week in March. I'm guessing that's part of the reason. And second part of the question, how politically significant do you anticipate this is for the feds?
So we'll start with the first one. In terms of timing, it is a little bit late. My understanding is I think the original intention was for it to be a bit earlier, but obviously the planning for the state funeral has taken into account, I think, a little bit of a delay there. So for Brian Mulroney, of course. So I think that has impacted the timing a little bit. But in terms of its significance, it's an incredibly important moment for this government. I don't think one budget, as we talk about often, one budget is one moment in time. It's not going to have a dramatic impact on the polls or the trajectory of the government, but a sequence of decisions cumulatively does. And the more focused the government can be in this budget on a couple particular issues that they need to make headway on, housing, everyday affordability, I think would be sort of the top two of those issues that Canadians just are feeling the government doesn't necessarily have their handle on or isn't necessarily in their corner on. And so I think the government really needs to use this as an opportunity to turn around that communications challenge they've been facing and reorient the policies of this government towards concerns that are really hitting Canadians quite hard in their everyday life. And so I think this is a good moment for them to start to turn that tide and change things around a little bit. But it's one moment in time. It's going to be an important chance for them to demonstrate their alignment with Canadians on those issues, demonstrate to Canadians they have their backs. But it's going to need to be about focus and the long-term communications drumbeat of that.
Yeah, to Dan's point, the opposition for months now, Shakir, has been really successful in trying to frame the government as out of touch, right? And we see that borne out in public opinion polling on the issue of affordability and cost of living. How important is the budget for the government to try and counter that narrative?
I think it's pretty important, especially like you said, this could be the last, if not the second last budget before the election. I think one of the things with the Liberals is that they've missed numerous opportunities to connect with Canadians, right? And I think in this budget, it's okay to talk about housing, and I'll give them credit. They've spent billions, if not billions, on housing, but they won't see the fruit of their labor, and those results are going to happen after the election. I think on affordability, are there any small pieces that can have immediate effect for Canadians to show folks that you understand their pain, you're connecting with them, and you're delivering for them? Are they going to be doing that? And as Dan said about, having some focus, my thing is it's really about a story. And like, what picture are you painting? I've always found the Liberals, they've been taking off their communications track through events, out of their own control. But how are you going to articulate a coherent vision moving forward about why you should be reelected, and how you have Canadians' backs? And the one thing I would say, we talk about polling. The biggest issue I think they're going to have moving forward is who's going to deliver that message. I think poll after poll has shown that the Prime Minister has largely fallen out of favor with a lot of Canadians. So is he going to be that spokesperson to deliver that message moving forward? And if he is, and if Canadians are not really listening to him, is that message going to be effective for the Liberals?
I guess I'd take the question a bit further and even ask Carl, if it's not the Prime Minister, it's likely the Finance Minister, Chrystia Freeland, who has had her own issues around kind of the degree to which Canadians feel she is empathetic towards their challenges. Obviously, that has evolved since the quote-unquote Disney Plus moment. But do you think she will face similar vulnerabilities?
Oh, I think so, because the lack of narrative has been plaguing this government and the way they've been trying to play catch up with the opposition, really, whether it is the Conservatives who are on the attack or the NDP who's trying to get concessions. the Liberals have not been driving anything. So the budget is a chance to kind of reframe that narrative and try to tell a story that will be compelling for Canadians. Right now, playing catch-up is not good enough. And the problem with budgets in general is that people remember them when they're bad, not when they're good, unless they're spectacular. And I don't see anything spectacular coming down the pipe. There could be something. Can always be surprised. There's 6 weeks before the budget. But unless there's something major, people won't talk about it come May.
Let me be a little bit crass, Laura, and ask, does the government need to offer that true visionary storyline, or do they just need to paint a picture that the opposition will take it all away, as they have been accusing them of doing the past little while?
It's a very good question, and I'm not sure they have that original story to tell anymore. I think they've struggled with that just because, this is what happens to governments over 6, 7, 8 years in power. What is new that they can present to Canadians? I would think this budget would be more about the word progress. And I think the Liberals will try to show Canadians what they've been doing for the past year or two, particularly on the housing front. And I think they are quite proud or feel like they've made a lot of progress on that front. I'm not saying that people will judge them to be successful in that or not, but I'm just saying I think that that's what the story that they're going to try to tell as kind of a steady as she goes image. I think they've been focusing a lot on housing, on affordable housing, I think particularly to appease their dancing partners, the NDP. Infrastructure will probably be part of that, green technology. I think it's going to be these kind of common Liberal themes that they've talked about, maybe less so as presented by Justin Trudeau with his face plastered all over it. I don't think his face will be on the budget prediction. Not that it ever is, but look, I think it's going to be kind of they're going to try to show themselves as a serious government that's making progress on these key files, on these important fronts. Will that be enough? I'm not sure, but I think that that's going to be the story that they're telling.
Yeah, I guess that's my question too, is saying we've already done a lot and we're going to do more of the same. Like, Dan, is that enough, or do they need to plot out new territory?
Well, I think on housing, which will be the central message of this budget, they're going to need to show that they've made a lot of fast movement. If you think about it, a year ago, the federal government really wasn't anywhere on this file. It wasn't a main communication story. It wasn't a significant policy priority. And since last summer, as this has become the dominant issue facing Canadians, they've moved quite quickly to introduce a great number of policies, a great magnitude of spending over the course of the last year that they're going to want to highlight. But it can't be the end of the story. It can't just be a victory lap. It needs to be a look forward. A number of, I think, new policies will need to be presented that say, we're going to keep doing this. We're the only party that you can count on to continue to get housing built in this country. They're going to try and say, Pierre Poilievre talks a lot about this, but doesn't have any plans for it. We've got a real plan and we're putting it into action. That will be the story they're trying to tell. I think success will be when we see the budget, quite frankly. It's going to need to be a substantive document that makes progress on this file. Or, as Carl says, it's going to be received, I think, quite poorly.
Shakir, do you think that the way in which the Liberals have so far positioned the contrast between themselves and the Conservatives, particularly as it relates to a lot of the stuff Dan was just talking about, is working for them? And do you anticipate to hear more of it?
Like I said, on the housing piece, you can spend all you want. It's just difficult for the Liberals to get credit because you're not going to get those results in an immediate timeline, right? You're talking about 3, 5, 8 years to get new housing built at any significant number. I think to what Laura was saying, when you start contrasting with the Conservatives and, the Liberal line has been, they'll take you backwards. I think when we start seeing things like ArriveCan, how much that project ballooned to the multi-million dollars, I get it. It might be like one-time spending on certain projects, but that Conservative narrative starts to resonate with folks that, there is a lot of spending in Ottawa, unnecessary spending in Ottawa. And I think when the Liberals talk about the Conservatives will take away X, Y, and Z, folks don't believe that. They don't think that there's not things that we can't get rid of because they see so much mismanagement in Ottawa. So I think that Liberal narrative is not strong enough. I'm not sure people are actually going to believe it as they push it forward, that the Conservatives are going to take away all these goodies the Liberals put forward.
I'll give you the last word on that.
The
Carl.
message is simple. The Liberals are spending too much, is what the Conservatives are saying. And the response of the Liberals will be spending more. There's something of a disconnect here between the attack that's been working with Canadians and the way that Liberals are trying to get back on the offensive. And I don't think that just spending more on things that will not achieve results immediately will achieve them anything good politically.
Do you think, though, that it is a vulnerability for the Conservatives at all, that they keep positioning this in the eyes of Canadians as, here we give you that which the Conservatives will take away? Not to say it's true, again, but the Conservatives are not specific in the response to that. They just generally say they won't cut services.
Yeah, the problem is that, when you come to housing, for instance, there's a shortage. And so what are the Conservatives going to take away exactly that you're giving us if we have a housing shortage? So that narrative cannot take hold if the evidence shows that there's a problem and the Liberals are not fixing it.
Right.